I was trying to find an extremely crappy version of Rockin' in the Free World or Heart of Gold. I mean, Neil Young, sure.
Back in the day, it was
Listen,
okay.
he's a classic rock guy, that's fine. But if you want to act like a bitch, you're going to get thrown off of Spotify.
Right, exactly. It's like Pee Wee Herman saying, you know, it's me or it's Joe Rogan. I mean, not a close call.
Exactly.
Or it's like the time I was doing a favor for this woman who had problems, a bunch of kids, and an older woman, and lived near my home in upstate New York, and mutual friend was trying to help her too, and this person had she had a heart of gold, but she had a really crappy car that was kind of really scary.
That's a whole new song, Charles.
Yeah, it could be a country song.
I've been searching for a crappy car.
And just noticing you've got water on the glass there.
I put it there.
All right, okay, good.
Hidden.
Okay. Just making sure that you knew.
In case I get thirsty.
Right.
Now, I want to make sure that we are live here. We are. That's good. Thanks to all the people who are viewing on the Sunday with Charles YouTube channel. Look at that, all that preparation, and I forgot to get there we go. Before we get into the information, Charles, I want to make sure that people know they can watch simulcasts on the Sunday with Charles YouTube channel. We've got 15 people with us there now. And the thing that's good about this Sunday with Charles YouTube channel is I've been able to restore some of our classic episodes. If people missed Planet of the Dopes, especially if you're that woman who started feeling sick after playing around with a lab monkey that escaped from a crash. I mean, if you need somebody to tell you don't go near the lab monkey that's escaped and hissing in your face.
Right. Wear a mask.
Yeah, I don't know. That's it's a tricky thing, but anyway.
So just, if I could just finish that one story. So this person had a heart of gold, was responsible, and picked the children up and took them around and did errands. My kids would report back, you know, I'm scared to get in that car, I'm scared to drive with her. So we were trying to help her out and pay her to look after the kids, and so we went back and forth, and then about, I don't know, a number of years later, she comes into me and said, if you don't, you know, increase my salary by X, Y, and Z, I'm gonna quit. I said,
bye.
Exactly. Bye. You know, that's basically what this idiot Neil Young is doing here, and what this idiot is doing. I mean, the reason I love this poster so much, I could imagine Joe, if he actually thought he knew how to play the guitar, he'd be sitting there, you know, riffing on it and deciding that he's really doing a fantastic job, and you know, the thing is not tuned, it's making no sense.
No strings on it.
Right, there's probably strings on it, but it's just like completely out of tune, and he's mumbling to himself. Should I say this in public? I mean, this guy it's just, I was watching several different networks last night reporting on this, and it's not simply Fox tearing the guy to shreds. I mean, it's lots of people and from different political viewpoints.
When you say this, what do you mean this? Ukraine?
I'm just saying this complete fuck up.
Joe Biden.
He's just, it's a kind of, you know, you go into, I don't know if you ever had this experience, but you go into school, and for me it was 7th grade, switching from one school to another.
I went to school.
But you know, switching, I don't know if you switched into schools in 7th grade.
No, actually.
So the way it worked for me is that it was one school, Grace Church School, which was a tough school. But Horace Mann, for me, started in 7th grade. So it was a whole new people, a bunch of people. Nobody from Grace Church was there. No new friends day one. And a totally different approach to grading. You know,
and teaching, I would imagine.
Yeah, a lot tougher. And so, you know, you go from one environment to another environment. So this guy went from being a crooked out-of-work senator, skiving with his sons and family off of his reputation and his potential to be president of the United States. Suddenly he's actually got to, you know, be the captain of the good ship Titanic USA. and from just really from his first instincts, I mean, what kind of moron says day one, okay, what I want to do on January 20th when it's cold and there's a long lead time to get any oil and gas flowing in this country because there's so many regulations at state and federal law. What I think I'll do is I'll cancel this pipeline, which is about to go on stream, and I'm going to open up the southern border, and I'll get ready to extricate ourselves from Afghanistan because I don't want to pay the travel costs. I'll leave all the equipment there so the terrorists can get it more easily. I mean, it's at this stage, I've kind of said to myself that he's just an addled fool. But I wonder if we don't overlay the revelations now from Peter Schweitzer in his latest book, which I'll get to in a second, and conclude that he's a traitor. I mean, this is not, what he is doing here is benefiting our enemies. It is not benefiting the average Americans. It certainly is not benefiting, the union people and the, I mean,
This is Taliban playing Parcheesi on a private jet.
right, you got to send him by private jet.
You told me about Parcheesi.
Yeah, Parcheesi, exactly.
But look at him. He's like got words with friends on the phone, this guy on the right.
Economics for dummies. I mean, he's
It's ridiculous.
how do I connect to Pornhub? But I mean, it's
Right.
just, it's preposterous what this president has been doing. But then we go back to the period when you and I were in Norway in late January 2020, and now yesterday Brett Baer had some very good reporting, frankly, several segments, where he went back over that timeline, which wasn't as precise in my head as it was in his reporting, that Fauci definitely suspected, according to contemporaneous emails, that Fauci and others suspected that this was potentially man-made, and this leak from the bat market idea was one of many that was considered, but people were leaning 60-40, 70-30 to it being man-made early on. And so you think back to that period, and you could change your memory of time. Obviously, that changes as you age and as details become less, close to the front of your mind. But when you until Google decides to work with the Hillary Clinton BleachBit team, you're going to be able, with DuckDuckGo, and what is that?
The bat soup, Charles. This came from a lab.
It's like your worst first date ever?
Well, but I just
Order the
realized
bat.
something. This is probably staged because look, this girl is supposed to be eating the bat soup, but there's nothing in the bowl. And then this is like alphabet soup with a plastic Halloween bat in it. I don't know if this is even real.
I mean, this could be, Bill Clinton, apparently there's rumors that he needs another heart or something like that. I mean, a medical heart. He doesn't have a heart. Yeah, he doesn't have a heart.
That's why they took that 31-year-old guy off the transplant list in Boston for I need that heart, buddy. F.O. But seriously, if you were going to make bat soup, would you leave the hair on it?
The hair's the best part.
I think they'd skin it and cook it, and it would just be like chicken soup, but with bat in it.
It's like, what I was going to say, you got the what was that, the Gillette raccoon dinner
This is
in
like
Arkansas?
batalingus she's doing over here. What is this girl doing?
A lesbian bat lover. Lesbian bat lovers from hell.
Ridiculous.
New movie.
Sorry, you just asked a question, and I was caught up in the
lesbian bat lover.
there.
Yeah, no, I mean, this kind of a meal is akin to me to the Arkansas, Gillette raccoon dinner. I mean, what person actually decides to go to a cook-a-thon where you're going to eat roadkill?
I'll tell you what. One of the things that I do, and when we were doing like weird shows and everything, this was sort of, if something is not poison, and like if other people are eating it, no matter how weird it is, I will try it.
Okay, remind me to check carefully whatever you might be serving should you invite me over.
Not that I would make it, but if we
dinner.
like went to some cultural exchange and they said, oh, well, the meal is tarantula, and everybody was sitting there eating tarantula, and this was like a tribe of people who had done that and lived through it, I would do it. I'm not saying I'll go pluck a mushroom out of the forest and just eat it.
Right.
But I mean, I've eaten this will make you sick if I say it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. I mean, you're talking to a man who, for the first 5 years of his working career, had the same sandwich every day.
Yeah,
Then I switched from American cheese to Swiss cheese with ham.
And got pissed. You were like, this is not grilled cheese.
Exactly. But I mean, with Biden here, it's no longer comical. And put yourself back. I don't know if you were watching the Democratic debates early on, but Kamala Harris, or Monica Harris, I should say, she really just put the knife in Joe Biden in that first debate. It was kind of like what the the fake Indian Warren did to Bloomberg. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just like a sucker gut punch. And there Joe was down on the floor after that. People were saying he's going to have to drop out of the race.
Right.
And this kind of gesture here, you see how she's put her finger in your face like that? That's something you don't do, right? You see how she has her finger pointed at him? And
He's looking dejected.
he's looking like, why am I here? Admiral Stockdale. But I mean, at the end of this debate, people...
Where's my ice cream?
Where's my Girl Scout? Anyway, many people were saying that he's finished, right? He went
were
from
right.
being finished to being the runaway front runner in 6 weeks.
Ridiculous.
And this is all at the same time that Fauci, evil Fauci and his overlords are making a decision, Peter Daszak and others, to shut the country down to protect us from this dread disease. And, you know, I've got to believe that there is an intelligence agency. I've come to the conclusion that we have the whole 17 agencies, it's lack of intelligence.
Unintelligent agencies.
It's by design. You know, we're going to when we find the crimes that our politicians are committing, we're going to put those in a book over here,
and
we're
can't see it.
Yeah, that we could use so that we can blackmail them to pay us off and let our dark programs get bigger and bigger. But I have got to believe that there is an intelligence agency. It might be in Israel, it might be one of the European ones, it could be who knows where, that is able to do what must be obvious. When people who are when candidates for high office travel on private planes, there is a record. There's a record of what the fuckers are doing. And the people who are in there, the pilots, the co-pilots, the stewardesses, stewards, the mechanics, the people in the airport where you're waiting, or the hotel, the cleaning staff, whatever, they see a lot of stuff.
That's true.
And they must notice. I mean, to segue into Peter Schweitzer's book, Peter Schweitzer's book is sickening, frankly. I mean, it's very well done. Not that, we'll talk about that book later. But this book here, I went over, yesterday, as you know, I walked over to Union Square, and I went to the Barnes & Noble, and I was shocked that it was actually on the table of books they're trying to sell. So they probably printed a lot of these suckers. And I rushed and got my copy. This book is about 246 pages long or thereabouts. It has about, I think it might have 100 pages of footnotes.
$42 for the audio CD. Who would get that?
You.
Nah, I'll get the Audible for free. Oh, you know why? Because once you have this, you can keep it. Audible, if they decide you are against the Fuhrer, they can just cancel and you lose all the books.
Is that right? Okay.
I mean, when you have Kindle, I mean, that's the thing that hardcore, book Librophiles like yourself would hate about Kindle. Is
Bibliophiles.
Bibliophiles. Yes, that's a stupid
But
mistake.
hardcover.
Right. All these other digital assets can be deleted, and people who truly revere books don't like that.
But just to stay on this for a quick sec, so for me, I made the determination about 40 years ago that I would no longer buy paperbacks and I would move to hardbacks, and unknowingly would go to the bookstore maybe twice a month and just start buying a bunch of books. And I didn't realize I was always buying first editions.
Huh.
And then when I finally realized that, I said, this isn't stupid. Why don't I keep doing this? I'm doing that for 40 years. Anyway, this book is very well researched. It has a gigantic research team, according to the acknowledgement section at the end of the book before the footnotes. But what it alleges, in a nutshell, with names, dates, with access to internal communications, is that the Biden family has sold out to numerous foreign parties for a long time in amounts that are actually staggeringly low, and we'll get to that in a second. I mean, if you're going to sell out this economy, which today is, call it 75 trillion, it might be more than that, and we'll get to whether GDP is a good measure of the size of an economy or the positive developments inside an economy, call it 75 trillion. You don't sell out this economy for $31 million unless you're a freaking moron. You're the kind of person who's like, you've stolen a whole bunch of merchandise out of, I don't know, a Nike store, and you start going down the street, hey, you want this sneaker for 2 cents? I mean, I mean, if you're going to be a grifter and a traitor to this country, at least get paid.
Market value,
Yeah, not 31 million, you know.
But I wonder, Charles, isn't it possible that that's what we hear and there's so much more?
Well, I'm going to give a brief summary of how this works. So, in the world that I used to work in at the end of my career in banking, what we were doing is putting together precisely the type of funds that Peter describes in this book. Okay, and the way these funds work, the best of all possible fund that you can come up with is a fund where you're going to be able to put tens of billions of dollars to work over a long period of time. So you do your first fund, it's $2 billion, you do a good job, you give your investors back $5 billion, and you get a nice big check, and I'll explain how that works. Then the next
first $2 billion is the hardest, Charles.
Well, I'm just saying, in this type of an institution, well, it's a funny world. It's a very funny world, and most people don't have the exposure to it that I have, and so that's why I thought I'd take people through it. So Schweitzer so far has not, and others so far have not said, the remarkable thing about this is not the 31 million, it's not the political ties, it's how in the fuck did a crackhead manage to get, even, you know, the political stuff generally does not matter in the world of trying to make money, seriously. It just doesn't matter. Because
what do you mean?
Well, because if you're sitting there, you're an insurance company, you're a sovereign wealth fund, and you take seriously your requirement to earn a rate of return, ideally significantly higher than inflation if you can do it, over long periods of time, so that if you sign up for a life insurance policy, I've got to invest your money as the money you give.
Yeah, it's like $300 a month.
Well, but
it adds up.
You spread that over several million people.
Since
it's
my
a lot
20s.
It's a lot of money, and you are expecting the insurance company. You don't want to hear, you know what? I found this fund. It's run by a crackhead.
Yeah,
his father's the president. I put all your money there. We lost it. I mean, you don't want that, right?
Yeah.
And so the people who do this responsibly and well, there are a lot of them. There are many big insurance. Insurance is an old concept,
right?
And it's been around for a long time. And
risk averse, I would presume.
Risk averse, but also what they do is they have checklists, just like in the movie business, probably their checklists, the publishing business. There are these things, rules of thumb that you follow carefully. What's one of the
best practices?
The first rule of thumb is
don't hire a crackhead.
Yeah, that's way you wouldn't even get, don't even think about it. But first rule of thumb is, if somebody has a great idea, a novel idea that's never been tried before, by definition that will be a first-time fund. Okay, you'll think about that because sometimes the first person who came up with modern constructs to do a venture capital fund back in the 60s or 70s. That was a very good idea to be in there early, right? So you'll think about it, but the idea has to be truly novel.
And don't convert everything to that right away.
Exactly, and you'll put a small piece in there. And by small piece, I mean, less than 1%.
Right, test it.
Not much. And why you're doing that, and this is the way, it's a boom or bust world for these type of funds. In the very beginning, when the team is trying to get started and trying to get institutional backing, it's tough to get that fund across the line. If that team is successful in a construct that could be carried out for another 50 years, let's say, then that team has something of enormous value because everybody in the world will want to be in the second fund and the third fund and the fourth fund. And the value of the management company is very, very high in that it becomes really high the second you raise the first fund and then deploy the first fund and in return good money to your investors. So typically the way we cobbled together our first few things, the various people I was working with and I, is you would go to family and friends because institutions would say, fuck you. I mean, there's no point in going.
Did they call it doctors, lawyers, and Indian chiefs? Maybe that's just the film industry.
That could be the film industry. But no, you go to friends and family and you'd say,
Indian chiefs don't have a lot of money.
They do now with the casinos and stuff.
That's true, actually. Royalties. That's what they're talking about.
Royalties from Yellowstone. But so you start with this idea that putting together a fund is tough. And then when you go before an insurance company, which is not as tough as a sovereign wealth fund. And mind you, I've never tried to raise money from a sovereign wealth fund because they're so hard. But when I've talked, I did some work on GE with a big sovereign wealth fund, but it wasn't to raise a fund. And the distinction between picking up the phone to a sovereign wealth fund and saying through a friend, as I did, there's a problem at GE and here's why and here's what you should do and maybe we can work together on a special purpose investment just having to do with this. Then the sovereign wealth fund doesn't have to say, well, now we have to check Charles out. Does he have a team? What are the strengths and weaknesses of the team? Is the team going to get into political infighting? Because all teams do. The youngsters always think they can do a better job than the older and the middle guys. And people get divorced and they have fights and they go crazy like Leon Black and others. I mean, so you have all these issues. And typically the folks who are around decision-making, or involved in decision-making and putting big, serious money into a fund have red flags. And a red flag is definitely, a serial fuck-up. I mean, Hunter Biden...
That is a red flag.
I mean, he's just a serial fuck-up, right? I mean, he was all kinds of cocaine in a rental car, taking showers with his...
passing out with hookers and criminals all around and losing laptops left and right.
Right. So the biggest, what Peter Schweitzer's emphasizing, what Hannity was emphasizing, what the Fox people are emphasizing is the Biden family took $31 million. And what I would emphasize is in no way, shape, or form were any of these transactions legitimate.
Right.
There's no way that a real sovereign wealth fund, as dumb as, you take the dumbest sovereign wealth fund in the world.
They'd say no way.
They'd just say
it's like I go to the draft pick for the NFL or something. And well, let's hire him.
Or I'm the one who does the images for the each week. Jason, we've done a lot of these. Let me take a shot at the next one.
Hold my beer.
That's right. It's like not gonna happen. So here we have these revelations, and Peter is highly experienced and very good at on TV and explaining all this. But what he should be hammering is that when the Chinese sovereign wealth fund, of which I don't know if there's just one, but there's at least one, is going to publish information, we should be watching. If we had a real intelligence operation, we would be looking at decisions by sovereign wealth funds. What are they investing in?
Right.
And who? Because oftentimes they have to, under their local law, they have to explain what they're doing with the money because it's the people's money. And when the word came down that it wasn't just one thing, it's a whole bunch of things.
Something's wrong with this.
And you would think, call me stupid. I mean, maybe what they do at the CIA is just like what they do in the SEC. Which porn channel are you going to be on today? I mean,
but isn't it more likely that 10% for the big guy, and then something is happening that the CIA wants, or they obviously would stop this? They have the ability to grab you and stop you from doing what you're doing when they don't want you to do it.
Well, my understanding, again, not from the CIA, but from just life, is that any foreign interaction that a U.S. citizen has is monitored. Particularly if it has anything to do with finance. If you're moving money.
How about if it has something to do with the president's family?
Well, I guess the answer is don't monitor that shit, right? But so we look at this book, and what Hunter I got as far as like the first several discussions of what Hunter and his team managed to do, and then this guy Tony Bobolinsky gets involved. I mean, they're saying because he's experienced, he demanded an $850,000 salary. Now, salaries have gone up since when I left Wall Street in 2002. I don't think for a startup fund, $850,000 salary for a startup fund that hasn't made any investments yet is off the charts high.
So
it shouldn't be, if I just finish, in that world, you're not playing for the salary. What you're playing for are what are called carry points. And those are, without having everybody's eyes glaze over, that's where...
Ownership in the profits.
Well, the investors typically on a large fund and $1 billion fund will put up, the inside investors will put 1% of $1 billion up as a group, so that's 10 million over time, and the other people will put up 990 million, and then there's these complex formulas, but when you split the profits up, 20% of the profits on the billion, basically really on the whatever the math is, 990 million, 20% of those profits go to the management team. So if you turn 990 billion, if you make people $5 billion, you get $1 billion.
Yeah, you don't really care about 800,000.
You're not. Yeah, so you're negotiating for that, and you're also negotiating for how you determine the profit. So if you're a shrewd investor, what you're going to do in a fund is you're going to say, listen, you are a team that's coming along and saying that you're going to do real estate or infrastructure or political graft, and we've got many funds involved that do political graft. We've got the Bush family of funds. We've got them making this stuff up, but we've got many crooked politicians who will get involved in this stuff. And we expect a target rate of return of something, 9%, 10%, whatever the number is. And we're only going to give you 20% of the profits once you achieve a rate of return of 10%, or pick a number. Right? You don't just say, I'm going to give you 20% of the profits, and if you lose all the money, there's no penalty.
Right.
I mean, that's a pretty sweet deal, right? You're just going to swing for the fences every time, and that's not the kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that maybe, you might, if you were Epstein and you want to get close to the royal family, because once you get close to the royal family, there's a whole bunch of dumb suckers who will say, well, God, if he's close to Prince Andrew, of course I'll give him I'll give him all my money to manage because he's close to the royal family. And now when I come into London on my gigantic yacht or my big plane, I can just tell my friends, well, I'm going to tell Queen Elizabeth that I'll be dropping by for a few minutes to speak with Andrew, and I don't need an appointment. I'm Les Wexner. I'm not saying he did that kind of stuff, but in the real world of competitive funds, where you've got the Norwegian funds, the Middle Eastern funds, some Asian funds, the Singaporean sovereign wealth, these are all gigantic funds, and it's not like you're sitting there and a great idea comes along and there's room for everybody. Right? I mean, a great ideas come along once in a blue moon, and there's much more money looking to invest in those great ideas than there are great ideas.
Right.
So there's heavy competition in the world of big investing, putting large amounts of money to work to find the best possible teams, to tighten up the best terms. There are experts in this area who have done not millions, but thousands of funds and know the mechanics. And particularly if you're going to do a global fund, money coming from China to invest around the world, I tried to do a forestry fund like that, not involving China. And when you're taking in investors and you might buy a forest almost anywhere in the world, you have to hire a law firm that's competent and an accounting firm to look through and say, this structure makes sense if we want to invest in Argentina, and this structure makes sense if we want to invest in Africa, and this in Brazil, and this here.
Don't miss the forest for the trees. So what are you saying? Is Bob Alinsky did he want 850 grand because he knew this was a screwy deal?
Well, but you see, perhaps. And
so that makes him a little bit on the hook.
No, the whole thing is very, very suspicious. I mean, the people I know in this world who have done well, most of them have concluded that for all the hassle you have to deal with now, the regulations, each investor is going to have this thing to say about every deal and may or may not like what you're doing and may or may not complain. The people who've done well say, you know what, fuck all you guys, I'm just going to invest my own money
right.
and I'm not going to put up with the hassle. So I think it's like anything else, the classic Ponzi scheme fraud operation, the way it works is you offer something to somebody that's better than that somebody should actually get, and the person you're offering it to thinks that they are snookering you.
Yeah.
I mean, take for example the Madoff situation. I mean, the Madoff sell was a sell I've heard many times, and I know is utter bullshit, which is I can produce consistent returns higher than the market by taking less risk. That was the essence of the Madoff sell. And the way he very cleverly and his team did it is they would say, hey, Jason, it wouldn't go directly to Jason. It would go to
Jason's his wife or something.
No, it would go to your dad's
advisor.
Well, not even the advisor. Your dad's, I don't know, buddy, fellow practitioner or whatever it is. Somebody your dad respects. And they go to him and they say, listen, I probably should tell you this. I've been in this great fund. It's been fantastic. I don't understand what they're doing, but I look at my statements and they look fantastic, and the paper's nice, and this is nice.
It always sounds better if you don't understand
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
So advanced. I don't even know what it is. But you should invest in it.
Right. And the statements are great. They don't waste money on these big accounting firms. They use an accountant in a shopping mall.
Ernie Skirmy.
Yeah, not even.
Oh.
Ernie Skirmy is like he's up in the big leagues. This is a guy whose office is behind a dry cleaning shop in some place in Putnam County or
I don't doubt
whatever, upstate New York. And I shouldn't really tell you this, Jason's father or whatever, but I hear that it's really tough to get into this fund, and I think there's an opportunity. I might just be able to get you into the fund, but I'll tell you it's a great thing. I've bought a bunch of new houses out of the fund. I've done this and that. But I'll tell you what, if I open the door for you and you ask a single question, I'm out, and you'll never get in.
Right.
And so if you're the standard, a lot of very smart, frankly, doctors and lawyers
get tricked by this.
They get tricked by it because their specialty is heart doctoring or whatever it is, and they're really good at that. And they understand that to be really good at that, you've got to focus on that particular thing. And you say, okay, I'm going to focus on this. The money's coming in. Let me find the heart doctoring of financial stuff, and I'll give this to my financial heart doctor.
But this is actually important, Charles, because I think what you're describing here speaks to, a lot of people are wondering, how did all these doctors get fooled? How did everybody get fooled? It's like, you could be the smartest person in the world, and that doesn't mean when David Copperfield does a magic trick, you immediately know how it was done. When someone endeavors to deceive you and you're the target, they study you and know a lot about you before they execute the deceit.
Right. And so going back to this idea of investment funds that are tied to political families, for me, is like, fuck all of that. I don't want to hear any of that. I have no interest
Guaranteed
in that at
theft.
all. No thank you. But then to see, Peter has somehow, or his people have somehow managed to cultivate folks who were, I think, fooled by the Bidens and who have internal communications back and forth, and they've shared these emails and documents concerning the evolution of a fund. And I know from my experience doing this that, for example, when we did the fund in Ireland, we had to, it's a different offering process. We did the first private equity fund in Ireland that was regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. And it was torture what we had to go through. We had to justify in the offering document every word. Why do you say "the" here and not, "a"?
Wow.
Why not this? And it took a long time to get the thing approved, and then a long time to raise the money, and on and on and on, and invest the money and get the money back. It's a big, long process, during which there's a tremendous amount of paper. This is just the early days. We started that process in '94, so it's literally just as the internet was becoming more widely used. And there should therefore be an enormous amount of paperwork, particularly on the period 2017 and afterwards, when this effort was at its depths or heights, or whatever you want to talk about it. You got a guy who
Crossfire hurricane, you mean?
No, the Biden family, taking peanuts from the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Liberation Army, while Joe Biden was being positioned.
And Ukraine, Burisma.
And many other places. And you would have thought somebody, maybe it's, they're all in on it together. Their job is like, I'll tell you what, Joe.
I think that might be right.
I'll tell you what, okay. You could take, if you want to sell the country out for $31 million, be my guest. You're a chump, okay? Over here, don't ask over here about why everybody in the CIA has farms and yachts and planes. Just don't ask any questions about that. I'm not saying everybody does.
But there's the right people do.
But the point is that this should have been apparent to people who are supposed to be in the Justice Department, supposed to be in the FBI, supposed to be in the security service. It should have become obvious. And I'm not just dumping on the Bidens. There's a chapter on the Bushes.
Oh.
And there's a chapter on your favorite friend, Trudeau. It's the Bush and Trudeau.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a highly recommended. For me, what I've read so far doesn't go deep enough, but I like, stuff that most other people don't like to look at, so I understand why what I like isn't in the book, and I'll go find the stuff I want to find. But the Bush family is no better. It talks about, how H.W. profited from his connections, first as an early representative to the People's Republic before there were diplomatic relations, and from that job, what did he do next? He became head of the CIA. And from there, after that, he became vice president, and how he and his various family members, it doesn't talk about the one I know, and I won't get into it, but I can tell you the modus operandi for both families is, look, we're going to say that we're public servants. The sacrifices I have to make, I only have 2 mansions. I've never done anything productive in my life in 50 years, and I have this expensive car over here and fancy suits and, never have to worry about money because 10% is for the big guy. And, that's the Biden side. And similarly, on the Bush side, all these different people, Neil Bush, Jeb Bush, and all these other Bushes have been grifting, basically. They've been getting off-market deals, and we all, the public looks at this and says, well, okay, I guess that's the way it works. And, at least they're not asking for $25 million a year in salary. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people also, they've said it to me. They're like, oh, well, this is just a normal amount of corruption for politics. And it's like, well, wait a minute.
No, it isn't. It isn't.
Yeah, well, but not necessarily this case. But I'm saying any amount. You can't say, well, that's acceptable corruption, because if you allow that, where does it stop?
Well, and I think it's also, you're sitting there, we talk about Neville Chamberlain, in the Peace in Our Time speech. He's cut a deal with Hitler, that guy Hitler. I don't worry, he's not going to, he's learned his lesson. He's just trying to get Germany back on its feet. We could work with him. It is crystal clear from lots of books, lots of reporting, and just common sense that in their minds, the victims of the Opium Wars, the descendants of people in China who can look back at several centuries of being literally drugged and oppressed by foreign powers, might think they have every right to wake up one day and say, you know what, there's 1.4 billion of us, and in America there's 335 million of them. Fuck America. Our market eventually is going to be bigger than theirs. And we should behave now as if we are the world leader, even though we're not the world leader. And
fake it till you make it.
Right. And so extend and pretend. But these Kissinger and Bush and these other people who have been promoting a fiction that China eventually, as economies get richer, they become more open. That's
Look at how
fiction.
excited he's become on this, and Kissinger is much fatter. Isn't that interesting?
I don't know that he's much fatter. He's pretty fat now.
In that first picture, look at the difference. Yeah. It's almost...
In real life, both of
them are fatter.
Yeah.
Look at that.
So I read, it could be apocryphal, but I read a story that when Kissinger met Mao for the first time, you know what the first question he was asked? How many people has Richard Nixon had sex with? Mao was curious because he used to screw lots and lots of people. I don't know if that's true.
Dude, that's a stupid question. I would have got up and left. Isn't this Ford right here?
Yeah. They're
all just delighted. These 3 smiling idiots.
Right. So you look at this guy. Mind you, Henry Kissinger is certainly academically brilliant.
Is this Mao again?
I don't know if that's Mao or Chu Enlai or which one it is. Looks like Mao from a different direction. Yeah. But you can imagine the pointy-headed academics in Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, and MIT, and elsewhere saying, "Look, Jason, you don't understand.
You don't understand." He's got to say it like that.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, "What is this guy saying? He must be a genius."
Exactly.
Can't understand all the mumbling.
What we need to do is we need to surrender. We need to surrender to a country controlled by the People's Liberation Army and a communist party. And I don't know if you noticed.
Who said that?
In essence, our elites. So this is the whole thrust of Peter Schweitzer's book, that our elites have sold us out to accelerate, to hasten the moment where China can crush us.
Why?
Well, because they get rich in the process.
Seems...
it's
don't
stupid.
They realize...
It's called treason.
But aren't they going to be killed when China...
they'll be dead. I mean, Henry Kissinger's almost 100 now.
No, it doesn't matter.
I'll still be dead. And so we're sitting here, and we're just, I remember asking my parents, and we've talked about this, I think, before, asking my parents who were, my father just turned 18 in 1944. My mother was a year older. Asking, how did German Jews stay inside Germany as Hitler rose? Hitler came to power well before 1941.
We're looking at it right now.
That's why.
If they decided tomorrow, oh, you don't have a vaccine, you got to go to this camp. And then I'd be in there like, well, geez, now what are we going to do? And then we'd all be killed. And then 40 years from now, they'd say, people got on those trains voluntarily.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Like, I can't understand it.
Well, but I'm making kind of the same point, that it is completely unacceptable. We're not, when you come in, you leave your apartment, you come back and you find a workman in your apartment, not having checked with you in advance, I don't think you take very kindly to that, right? I mean, you're
business judgment rule, Charles. We need to take this apartment.
Right. But you know what I mean? Like, if you let the superintendent in the building, the public servant like the President of the United States, say, henceforth and forevermore, because you don't like my ideas, I'm just going to rule by decree.
That's what he's doing.
Yeah, well, I understand that, and we've got to stop and say, no, douche, that's not what you're going to do. And but the tales in this Peter Schweitzer book, what he does is he dissects how Capitol Hill has been taken over, how academia has been taken over, how Republicans and Democrats.
Same guys doing that.
Exactly the same thing. And we had Gordon on. We've had him on several times. He's been fighting the fight for a long time. I think he obviously speaks Chinese fluently, and I think, may have been born over there.
I thought he said Hong Kong, or his wife is from Hong Kong.
I forget where he was born, but maybe here. But anyway, a guy like who's lived over there, pre-handover. He left pre-handover. I think he has a much better feeling for Gordon does than Peter. But having seen all, my attitude on this is, I'm from before this, I'm going to check any product that is made in China. I have no interest in buying, none. And this idea that we should be telling our own children that it's okay to go to a woke school and learn how to loathe yourself and how not to shave and how not to bathe and how to have a guaranteed income and just not even work at Starbucks, just hang over. I mean,
how to lose at swimming.
Yeah, how to lose at everything. Meanwhile, what we're going to do is allocate choice seats in our STEM programs to people who are basically employees of the Chinese Communist Party. Fuck that. That is really bad. These schools, honestly, in the next regime, which I hope we get a chance to have one, the next election, I think what we need to do is we really need to do a root and branch restructuring of the not-for-profit world to include educational institutions, medical institutions in particular, all major charities, any charity that has anything to do internationally, all of that needs to be cleaned out. And if people have been grifting off those charities, if you're the president of Harvard or Yale, or you've been grifting off a charity, you're going to jail.
They should send them to Rikers Island or wherever it is they have these suspects from January 6th.
I think, again, I don't know that we should do that, because that's basically accepting that
torture is okay.
I don't think we should. I think we should just
can't be like them. We got to give them due process.
Well, we have to restore the balance of the scales of justice in this country.
I agree.
We can't have pre-trial detention. It's amazing to me that we're just saying, oh, it's okay, sure, these people are down there January 6th. Put 600 of them in prison.
The key problem is the federal judiciary, Charles, because these judges have been granted unqualified immunity, I think it's called. They literally can do whatever the hell they want, and you cannot do anything. And that is not in the Constitution. That was brought about by I got to find out exactly how that was brought about. But we need the Judiciary Committee in Congress to say, you know what? This is not happening anymore.
Right.
Judges are going to be subject to, they got to be reelected. If they don't follow the Constitution, they can be fired or impeached or removed. Here's the process to start it. And if something happens where a judge does something wrong, they should be very concerned that they're going to be removed. And I also think if you're a judge or a lawyer and you do something that is found to have broken the law, your penalty should be 5 to 10 times what it is for a regular person, because you are educated in the law and you're there to uphold it and enforce it.
Well, and that's an excellent segue. That brings me back to Clinton. And if the core of the impeachment process for Clinton, the reason ultimately that he was disciplined was not by chicken shit senators who wouldn't look at the evidence. It was by the Arkansas bar and the Supreme Court bar, who, in the case of an Arkansas judge wrote a blistering opinion, negative opinion. It was a former student of Bill Clinton's. Judge Susan Weber Wright explained how damaging it is to the judicial system for anybody in the system, let alone the president, to lie under oath. Because the second you countenance lying under oath, you've just gutted the judicial system, right?
Undermining.
Right.
Depends on what you think
underwear
lying
mining.
is. Yeah, that's what he's doing, is underwear mining all the time.
Right.
Found a nugget.
So with that, I do have some new details.
Before we go to the details, because I know you have a lot, I wanted to ask you something, Charles. Sure. We know that the Taliban is, maybe they're done, but they went to Norway to negotiate whatever. Look at the aircraft they flew on.
Yeah, Norway paid for it.
But, okay, but this is a Boeing 727.
Oh, is it?
Well, yes, look at the tri-jet. What the hell are they flying this for? I wonder if all of these Taliban members will make it back to Kabul. Like, I got something to show you in the back. But I mean, isn't that weird? What the hell are they flying? I mean, they stopped manufacturing these jets in the 70s. The Boeing 737 is the most common.
I just don't even believe these people should be flying in a private jet of any type.
I don't think they should be, but it's just very strange to me who flies 727s.
Well, we don't know who else was on the plane.
We don't know whose plane it is. But you know what? I think we can kind of make out the tail number here. Is it O?
OH.
OH? It's hard to see.
Yeah.
But if anybody can figure out what the tail number is, we got to check out who owns this jet. I'm just very curious about people who utilize 727s for reasons we've discussed in the past.
Yeah.
And also, there's been some craziness going on here in New York. Hochul.
Yeah, I mean, it's cold in New York today. It's windy and cold, and the number of these pop-up tents that are all over the place, it's a freezing cold. What moron says, I think what I want to do, it's a dangerous pandemic, I'll just go to a perfect stranger and get tested for this.
Yeah, in the street.
It's free.
It's free, right.
Like in the freezing cold. I'll stand outside and get tested by a perfect stranger.
This is definitely a doctor
in
the tent.
Right.
Well, anyway, but see, this is a little confusing to people because in New York, state court is called Supreme Court.
Right.
So New York State Court in Long Island has struck down the mask mandate, saying it's unconstitutional. But this article is not telling us about the part where there was an appeal filed, and just by the nature of filing the appeal, that institutes a stay on so it's all frozen, and the mask mandate is technically back in effect. So I was able to leave the apartment building and return once without a mask, but now can't do that.
Inside the building?
Yeah, well, in this apartment, there's no mask mandate, but if I leave the apartment, they have threatened to fine me $1,000 if I'm in the building without a mask.
Really?
That's what they said.
Wow. But you can get toenail clippers for seniors there.
I don't think I need that. It's a good ad.
That's a weird ad.
I'm not going to get involved with that.
Yeah.
But what do we want to look at here? Oh, well, let's just make sure, Charles, that people are aware that they can follow you on Twitter and communicate with you there.
And let's go down. There's Margot Cleveland. If you could hit on this story.
In the steamer business?
But the actual story.
Oh, look at that. Finally, another picture of the guy. Where is this?
I don't know. when he was appointed in 2018.
I haven't seen that photo before. I hope he's all right. What's this?
Don't know. Okay.
Like a hematoma or something.
This is a book that, an article that came out today. It's lengthy. And it's interesting. I had, I do about one a week of these interviews with Katja, where she sends me questions and I try to answer them, and then she weaves portions of my answers into commentary of other people who have ideas on the subject. And so there was until this recently happened, there was a back and forth on, is Durham actually doing anything?
Yeah.
And I know there are people in the school of thought who say no, he's not. I mean, this is quite a lengthy story by somebody who knows what she's talking about. This is Margot Cleveland, is a lot of experience as a lawyer, and in particular, a lot of experience understanding how to read filings and what they mean, et cetera. So this is a lengthy article that explains there was a filing recently by Durham where he was required to or asked to explain the progress of his investigation for various reasons. And what you glean, the Technofog first wrote about it. There are links to all these good articles, and if you have time, I highly recommend people reading. Excuse me. But the sum and substance of this is the big takeaways for me. One is ordinarily, and you know about this, that ordinarily lawyers for a client cannot be brought in front of a grand jury to talk about what they were doing for their client. Attorney-client privilege.
Well, no, there's something called the advocate witness rule.
Yeah, and then there's the fraud crime exception, or which she talks about in here, something like that. And judging by what is in this thing from Durham, he was able not only to get Marc Elias, force him to testify.
That disqualifies him from being the lawyer.
Well, he's the subject of it. I think
so he's not the lawyer to begin with.
He was. No, Marc Elias was. Remember, what Durham is doing with this now, supposedly, is he was supposed to investigate the origins of the investigation into Trump. How did this happen? And so now he's in a place where he's bagged the chair of the, not the chair, the top legal advisor to the Clinton campaign in 2016. That's Elias.
Durham has bagged him.
Durham has had him to testify, and apparently a lot of other people have testified, we learn. And in addition to that, we learn from this filing that he has a lot of correspondence, internal correspondence of Perkins Coie, the former chair of Perkins Coie. So this guy is going deep, deep, deep into what really happened in 2016, in my opinion. And that explains why various and sundry people, Elias and others, left Perkins Coie, why a senior person above the level of this bonehead left Perkins Coie. And things, oh, that's hilarious. That was the name of my dog.
What was?
Bodie.
Oh, wow.
But
well,
he's got a brains trust following him. Jen Psaki.
Well, I mean, he's got a lot of followers, and he's got this democracy docket. What do you know about this?
Nothing. Looks like,
Good-looking model. You should run for local office, Charles.
Yeah, exactly, on the democracy docket. But anyway, so my take, and I did my answers for Katja to questions surrounding Durham and this and that before these articles came out. And my view is that Durham is just working away. He is methodical. He has been at this for a year and a half, supposedly now.
Longer than that, no?
I think a year and a half in this latest guise. And he is, he's got a lot of people worried. And the question would be, can this weakened resident in the White House do something at this stage to impede the Durham investigation? That's really the question, because if they can't impede it, I think there are enough people on the, you look at the Democrat side for a second. The Berniacs, who were anti-Hillary, cannot be happy with Joe Biden at this point, right? I mean, many of them were anti-war, peaceniks.
Yeah.
And how can you think in winter? I mean, right now, our friend in Norway told me yesterday that the the electricity bills in Norway are 5 times what they were last year.
Wow.
All right?
Wow.
And they were not cheap last year.
But wait a minute, I thought Norway has tons of oil and...
Yeah, and the idiots who are in that over that industry decided to change things and export that
So
oil.
they're not refining it and using it, they're just sending it and getting the money.
Well, I think their big source of energy is geothermal, but I think they have natural gas and others. But it's a complex equation, but basically they fucked it up to fairly well, as did the people in Sweden. And so you now have it's the coldest time in winter is typically right around now. You're a month into winter, roughly.
Big snowstorm coming.
Big snow here maybe on Friday in theory, who knows. Just if Joe Biden says it's coming, it's definitely not coming, so we may as well ask him, we'll get the truth.
Well,
but the point here is...
The phone says 70% chance on Saturday.
Okay, that sounds pretty good, if you like skiing, cross-country skiing in the bitter cold. But this is not the best time of year to be planning military exercises in a cold climate north of most of the United States, where you're asking tired families who are just now licking wounds over the disastrous exit out of Afghanistan to say, you know what, we did such
Send
a
your
great...
person back to...
Yeah, we're going to call up the National Guard again. We want to send you to, like, Don...
Even worse, you thought Afghanistan was bad.
I could do worse.
Clean the sand out of your underwear and get those insulated shoes ready.
That's right. But we're all out of those because of supply chain issues. I mean, the notion that you would even try to go down this path as a progressive is, and it's one thing, you know, you have closer ties to the nation of Ukraine than I do. You're not that close, but I mean closer than I do.
I don't know about that. I have no ties to the nation of Ukraine.
I mean, to people
married to a woman who was born there.
Okay, that's my point. So I have
divorced from.
Right. Okay, and maybe there were happy memories, but my point is, there are many people of Ukrainian descent in this country, and maybe they have a lot to say and care about what happens in Ukraine and the state of American-Ukraine relations. But if I were to just tick off a list of, or in my mind, try to wrap my head around in 2022, another foreign adventure anywhere in the world, when I can't safely walk around Manhattan, and I wouldn't even think about going to Brooklyn or the Bronx or Queens or by myself. I'm not comfortable in my own fucked up city, which is supposed to be the greatest city in the world.
Safest big city in America.
According to Bill the Dummy.
Previously.
Yeah. We shouldn't be, if anything, we should be shrinking our foreign policy establishment, in quotes, a lot. And we need jobs for these kids with student loans. We should do a few checks. I mean, do you understand basic logic? Can you do accounting, finance? Have you read any history about America? That's sensible. Can you write? Can you speak? Can you show up on time? You take these kids, these kids who are talking about 4-day work weeks and universal basic income, and you take blowhard Henry Kissinger and you say, listen, dude, we're going to give you a rowboat or a sailboat. You don't need, and a sail, and you could just talk into that sail.
Row out 12 miles this way.
Yeah, and the wind, you can generate enough wind from your speaking, you'll get all the way back to Germany if you. So clean out these old farts in Congress, and I count myself in all, clean all of us out.
You're not in Congress.
Well, I know, I'm just saying the people who are just clinging to power, who can't wait to offer an opinion about the state of the urgency of doing a new deal with Iran or climate change or whatever. Get all those motherfuckers out. Let them spend time with their kids, their grandkids, whatever. Just stop fucking the world up, and let's get a new generation of people involved if we want to be involved. But where our focus should be is not outside our borders. It should be inside our borders.
Agreed.
We should be bringing jobs and factories and industry back into this country as fast as we can. And just break these long supply chains, forget about outsourcing to India and Vietnam and China, forget that shit, bring it all back, and forget about selling out to China for the fact that someday, Jason, in 50 years, China's going to be important. So you should give up all your money now.
I don't understand how people in Hollywood didn't see this. I was reading some article about how the relationship between Hollywood and China is breaking down, and that China is now creating their own movie industry with their own domestic whatever, and there was all kinds of turmoil between China and Hollywood. I saw that 10 years ago when Chinese people were trying to make deals with me. I was like, I'm happy to do business with you, but this
Cash.
deal, where's the part where I get money? Oh, don't worry about that. Just come to China. Sign here.
Right.
Like, what kind of deal is that?
Right.
And it's like you're saying, the idiots are like, yeah, China, I'll take this deal. And then you show up and like, now you can't leave.
Well, that's the 1.4 billion China person argument that I would throw people out of my office regularly for. I've got this gadget over here. We think we can make it in China and sell it in China, and there are 1.4 billion people in China. If I just sell to 10% of them, make that 1% of them, we're going to sell a lot of these widgets, and we're going to look at this, take 1% or 3%, and look at the revenue, and the costs are going to be this. And I say, excuse me, you're out of here. You're fired. Just get out of here. And too many people, including the GEs of the world and the GMs and other very big companies, have said, we have to be. For the long run, we've got to be in China. Now, if we don't get in now, then Ford is going to beat us. Or, JP Morgan said, if we don't get in, then, Deutsche Bank's going to get in. I was like, fuck all those people. Let them go try to do business in China and come back to the poor, because you're not going to bring capital back into this country. It's like a roach motel over there. The roaches go in and they don't come out.
The one friend of mine who took the deal that China was trying to give me didn't get paid and was very pissed off and had a difficult time leaving China.
Yeah, well, of course, exactly. And why take that risk? I mean, I really haven't spent very much time at all, less than a day, outside of Hong Kong. But I spent a fair amount of time in Hong Kong. I like Hong Kong. I'm saddened that I probably will never go back there. But there are other places.
I sat in the Cathay Pacific Lounge in Hong Kong when I went to see Cullen in
it's a nice land.
Thailand. It was a lot of different food options.
Right.
It was like different restaurants in each section from different countries and things. I didn't want to leave that lounge.
That's the new Hong Kong restaurant. Hong Kong.
Well,
airport.
I went to see Cullen in like 2018.
No, that's
something.
a new one. So the old. I remember the first time I went to Hong Kong was, I think, in May of 1989 or something like that, and it was I don't know if you ever went into the old airport. It was an extremely scary approach.
It was the one time I ever went there.
You would go in, you get close to the city, and you say, well, those apartment buildings look pretty damn close. You're going in, and then it goes like this, and it feels as if a wing could easily hit one side or the other side of the apartment building. And for many years after those trips, I would have nightmares. I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking that we're going to hit a building or we're going to crash going to the Hong Kong airport.
Man, why would
That's,
they?
Is it Kai Tak was the old airport?
I mean, again, I don't know about the old airport. I spent a little bit of
So
time.
the new airport's outside of is a distance from Hong Kong. You have to typically take
I just landed in this airport, sat in this lounge eating a variety of different food, and then flew to Thailand, exactly.
Something you can't do right now.
No.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to bury folks in detail, but I do want to go in a little bit here. Let's do first the Trump, New York Attorney General on Trump. Yeah. So here we have Letitia James, she's Beria, the KGB's Beria. She's decided that Donald Trump is evil and the Trump family is evil. One way or another, she's going to get Donald.
They're trying to pass a law that if former president is charged with a felony, then he doesn't get his pension. Like, does Trump care about the pension?
He gave his salary away.
Right. It's a stupid thing for them to do.
Well, again, this is persecution for political reasons. This has nothing to do with justice by, frankly, a bunch of morons. I mean, the ownership of real estate in this country, since there's been an income tax, there has always been a difference between the accounting value on financial statements of an entity, for accounting purposes, and the tax accounting. There's been privileged tax accounting. In other words, you can write a building off faster for tax purposes than you can for accounting purposes. So there are always variances between book and tax financial statements. It is a crime to go into a bank and say that you are a validly organized and operated presidential foundation
When you're not.
and that you're going to go and you need a construction loan of $27 million when you don't need the $27 million on February 20th, 2004, hypothetically speaking, in Little Rock. That's a crime. You're not allowed to borrow money that you don't need during a campaign year, 2004, when you're trying to get Kerry elected and when the lead outside director for the Clinton Foundation is Terry McAuliffe, chair of the Democratic National Committee and desperate to find money to back that idiot Kerry. That's a crime. That's a whole passel of crimes. But it's not a crime, I don't think, and maybe there are indiscretions I don't know about, but it's generally speaking not a crime to, in the real estate business, buy a whole bunch of properties, fix them up, find investors, and make different sets of arguments. I mean, you go at the inception of a project and you say, look, I bought this building over here, this lot, and here's an artist rendering of what the thing is going to be, and we want you to think about buying an apartment off the artist rendering, which is something, I don't know if you said you did that or didn't do it, but I looked at doing that several times. Thank God I didn't do it the second time. But that's standard, and there's always going to be a very big difference between the final product after it's built out years later and what the marketing materials say in the very beginning. There are always going to be these kinds of differences. Be that as it...
But the value changes as those sales happen. Like if I was trying to sell you an apartment and I say, ooh, Paul McCartney just bought an apartment based on these drawings, I could plausibly say now it costs $100,000 more because people want to be in the same building with Paul McCartney.
Right, and that's another trick that they do in the real estate business where the Paul McCartney who bought is a plumber from Boise, Idaho. It's not the singer. Right?
Well, but the other trick is there's one less apartment now, so these that remain are worth more because people want them.
But there's the Madoff trick as well that there is no Paul McCartney, there is no deal.
He canceled.
Yeah, there never was a deal. It's
right.
just like you're a schlub, but I thought I'd get some extra money out of you. So this process to persecute a person who has a large following, it's not as if, and I don't think you should persecute anybody, but it's not as if Donald Trump is a complete unknown. I mean, there are quite a few people who remain pissed about what happened in the 2020 election.
But what about this, Charles? It doesn't say that she's, this is possible fraud. So again, innocent until proven guilty. And then here we have a New York Times article. He could go and defend this and they say, oh, you know what? It wasn't fraud. But
well, she shouldn't be, and her people shouldn't be in the business of leaking to the Times. This is the standard way in which they do things. I mean, if you were trying to make an argument for getting productive people out of New York City and out of New York State, you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
You're a fantastic job. You get crime on the streets, carjackings are escalating now. Somebody was just shot in a hospital the other day.
I saw that. Unbelievable lockdown in the hospital.
And you're sending a message to the rich that if you dare to become politically active like Trump, and if you ever lose, we're going to crush you. We're going to use the legal system to crush you and torture you. There's one reaction to that. The coward's reaction is to give in. The Trump reaction and other maybe, all right, I wasn't going to do anything about New York. I was just going to focus on running for president, okay, in 2024. Now, I'm going to fucking crush you.
How is he going to do that?
Well, New York's a funny state. George Pataki got elected governor and reelected with no money to speak of, no serious money, not like Bloomberg.
How did he do that?
Because upstate New York is filled with people who hate this Letitia James bullshit and hate the Manhattan bullshit and hate the loony left wing of this state and this country, and so. And what you're doing by these actions, a lot of the hard left has begun moving to Florida, naturally, to other places. This type of behavior is so outrageous that I'm not promising that a conservative is ever going to be in charge in New York State, because I think it's more likely that conservatives will leave. But I do think the polls are in every day now. There's a new Democrat who's saying, I'm not going to run for election again. There's not another one since our last broadcast has come forward and said that he will not run in 2022. But The good news is Nancy Pelosi has decided to run again because she thinks she has a real shot at being Speaker of the House when the Democrats really get crushed in November, as they will. So on the one hand, we have, in New York, let's persecute the Trump family,
Yeah.
who are authentic New Yorkers. You know, they've been multiple generations living in
Yeah,
the
it's
state.
as New York as you can be.
Right. And on the other hand, let's take these carpetbagger Clintons and just not defund, defang the apparatus. It's like, you know, for them, they've done sweet fuck all for this state and city. They are setting horrific, I'm not talking about the Trumps now.
I know, it's hard to keep up.
The Clintons have done,
It's not necessarily being shown if it's on screen. Clintons.
yeah, the Clintons have done sweet fuck all for New York City and New York State. And we're just going to turn off the laws, the strict laws that do apply in New York State in theory to charities that are under the purview of Tish James, directly under her purview. You know, for the Clintons, we're not going to prosecute that. EcoHealth Alliance, we're not going to prosecute that. You know, American Conservative Union, we'll throw them a bone too. Or if we're going to let the Clintons off, let's let these people off. They're useful. And, you know, one of the things that is just, now with this Schweitzer book, I suppose I should have been less hopeful about the FBI and the IRS and the security services.
Why do you say that?
Well, when we go back to the ProPublica and we chase out the 2009-90s for 31-158-0204. Okay.
Wow, that came up really quick.
And we...
Which year? 2008?
Yeah. No, 2000. First year they have it. Or, they don't have 2000 there. We'll have to get it...
Arkansas?
No, on the Clinton Foundation. Do about Clinton Foundation. Yeah.
Hi. Where do we get it?
This the about page, pretty far down. Yeah, up, about.
There we go.
And then down this page a bit. Reports and financials. And then audited financial statement, IRS Form 990s, 2000, yeah. Okay, so we look at this thing. This was received August 26th or thereabouts, 2001, okay? So the FBI investigation began around February 13th, 14th, or 15th, 2001. So here's something that's under FBI investigation, okay? And the Clintons desperately need money. They have not broken ground on the thing out in Little Rock in 2000, but they have managed in 2000 to buy land, to buy property that the Clinton family, branches of the Clinton family once owned.
Hot Springs.
In Hot Springs, right? That they've done. So you go down the page here a little bit, and here, slowly. Here we see they claim they spent nothing on professional fundraising fees. And let's look at Statement 2 and see what's in Statement 2.
Where do we get that?
Or actually, before we do that, go to the balance sheet, which is here. Okay, this shows land, buildings, and equipment of $1.2 million, right? But how did they buy land by December 31st, 2000? That's the Hot Springs land. They weren't allowed to buy that land.
Credit.
No, I think just cash.
Yeah, under the table.
Right. So Statement 2 will probably be, if you scroll up, I'll be able to see it quickly. Keep going. I think it's there. And then we switch it.
Let's see here.
Okay. So notice it says in other, they spent in 2000 $500,000 other direct mail. Okay?
Where is other?
Right. Well, this is a
direct
breakdown
mail.
of other direct mail, right? So they
Is it 514?
1,000, yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of mail. And then events only cost, is that?
Let's focus on the $514,000. So that's all in fundraising, right? You know about New York law and fundraising. If you're going to raise money,
got to be registered.
you got to
with
be
the State Attorney
registered
General.
and registered truthfully and all this kind
Right.
of stuff. And if you are surrendering your law license because you lied under oath,
Sounds like something you should look at.
that gets you top of the, you get to be governor, of New York or whatever, senator for life. But so this is, some statements you look at them, and I think I've done this, but we won't do it right now. I think if you divide, if people are interested in doing this, look at how they categorize this. I think you're going to discover this is just invented numbers. They look like they're very precise, 514,823.
But
when
divide what?
Well, you take 3127 divided by 12508. What are you going to get?
0.25.
Okay. What if you do 18218 by 72871?
18218 divided by
72871.
0.2500003.
Right. So what that tells somebody,
they
like,
split it into four things and
it's
put them-
arbitrary. They may or may not have spent the 72,871, but somebody said to the the idiot who filled this out, Ernie Skirmy or whatever, just for program services, we don't have an office, a legitimate office. We haven't bothered to register it in New York. We don't know any. We were in the White House during 2000. This is a form for 2000 now. So how could we have program services during 2000? And we'll just arbitrarily say, why don't you just take 25% of the amount and say it's program services?
Let me ask you this, Charles, because we're in the territory of David Hawkins, that paper that he wrote, The Analysis of Expert Thinking. So when you look at this document, did something tell you that's a quarter of something? You just look at it. See, because I could look at this all day and never know that.
Well, that's just a trick.
In the same way that you and I could go on set to a 3D movie and I'd see something on the monitor that I'd say, stop the entire production, and you'd say, what is he even looking at?
I'd say, where's the set?
Where's the monitor? Right. So that is amazing what you just pulled out of there.
Yeah. I had done that before. I think if you take 16,262 and divide it by 65046, you'll see it's the same 25%.
16,262
divided by 65046.
0.25,
Right.
0.000769.
So what this is not an actual financial statement. This is somebody saying, all right, what are we going to say we spent? And we really don't want people to understand that in 2000, what was happening in 2000? Hillary Clinton was running for Senate and needed direct mail fundraising for that effort. The firm O'Brien, McConnell, and Pearson, which we're going to get to in a second,
Do we cheat him and how?
later is involved in various things, including raising money for the Clinton Foundation. But what they're doing by this, technically speaking, the postage, the amount they spent on postage, should have been in the body of the form. Let's go back to the page 2 and flip it. Yeah. Okay, there's a line for postage and shipping, and they say
Oh,
0,
wow.
right? And there's a line for professional fundraising fees, and they say 0. Now, if you take, let's take 37246 legal fees, and I can't see that.
Sorry.
37246 and divide that into 148983.
0.25,
Right, and so as a regular buyer and seller of companies, an advisor back in the day, this is garbage. This is invented numbers. We don't know what the real revenues of this thing were. We certainly don't know what the real costs were. They're hiding the fact that they were engaged in illegal fundraising in 2000. And this is something that we have discussed now in 15 minutes. And meanwhile, by 2004, November 18th, roughly 2004, there's an internal FBI memo that's in the FBI vault that says we had many FBI agents and numerous field offices looked at this thing, and we decided not to prosecute. Okay.
They looked at it, but they were like, meh.
No.
It's like, this is a stack of papers. Let's go to lunch.
Okay,
Wow.
so this is the report that was done, submitted in August of 2001, dealing with 2000. Now let's go to that story, the Scripps story.
The what?
Scripps story.
Oh, up here.
Exclusive. You see, it's yeah. Okay. Now, this is a story that I helped the author do, and it actually came out right before the election, and I think it had somewhat of an impact in 2016. I worked with this Marc Greenblatt, and he worked with Marin Mackles or whatever. Now, I think we've shown this before, but I want to show there's some links in here. I forget where they are. They might be at the very end. Yeah. Let's see. Cash. Oh no. Let's see. Following. Let's see. The following's. Yeah.
New Mexico?
I want to get to the ones in Mississippi. We can't find them. Yeah.
Reach the consent agreement?
Yeah, records, yeah. Okay, let's look at the date of this.
Oh.
July 11th, 2001, okay? So right before they file their 990 for 2000.
No, the.
Yeah, that's not the real name of the foundation. That's not its registered address.
303.
So the Mississippi people, didn't get to the real heart of it, but...
C is not a number, Charles.
It is in Arkansas. But it recounts, between September 14th, 2000 and March 19th, respondents solicited contributions from individuals in Mississippi in the amount of $3,000. So this is something that would have been germane for the 990 and for all your state filings for this entity. You should have said, we had a consent agreement, and not only that, by the time we signed the consent agreement, we had operated in many other states without registering, specifically in New York, where Hillary Clinton needed to have a base because she was running for Senate in one of the most expensive media markets in America,
right,
if not the world. It's tough to raise money for political contributions for a Senate campaign, but if you route them through a charity, then there's no tax deduction.
Right.
Right? So, and unlimited contributions.
Well, and also people might give money to a charity if it's helping people who have AIDS, even if they hate Hillary Clinton. They might not want her to be president.
This is pre-AIDS. This is 2000. He doesn't start bullshitting about AIDS until 2000.
Well, he's doing something, though, right?
But the other trick, and this is a trick I've seen, and it's not good, is that if O'Brien, McConnell, and Pierce, and we saw it in the Simpson-Thatcher bill, way back when, podcast. Remember when the top lawyer is interacting with, I forget who, I think it's the Podfather or somebody like the Podfather. We've run up so many costs, $160,000 or whatever it is in 2011, but if you want, we can cut the bill in half and you can put some of it in 2011 and some of it in 2012. No, you can't. The way it works under accrual-based accounting is if the services are performed in 2011, but the bill doesn't get ginned up till 2012, it needs to go in 2011, to pair it up with the revenues. That's the way you're supposed to do it, proving once again that lawyers and charity lawyers, not all lawyers, but charity lawyers in particular who live in the not-for-profit, no accounting, I don't give a shit world, don't understand some of these rules, and yet they will render, precise opinions, as the DLA Piper lady did, or the lawyer in 2015, November, who said, I used to run the IRS department that deals with this, and I've been hired to look at all this stuff, and there's nothing untoward here, we wouldn't prosecute, because you don't understand the fucking rules.
Wow. But that's the people in charge.
So when we talk about Donald Trump, who expects in the for-profit real estate world that a real estate developer is trying to lose money for your benefit? I mean, everybody understands that a real estate developer, particularly a flamboyant one like Trump, is going to say, this is Trentino marble, and this is a Persian rug here, and you've got this club here, and you can join this club. They're prone to exaggerations, and Donald Trump certainly is prone to exaggeration, right? I mean, that's
Is that a real...
That's what makes him fun to listen to it, right? He's always, it's a perfect call.
But is Trentino marble a real
I
thing?
think there is
perfect call. He says that repeatedly.
Everything's never been done before. This building has never been done before. It's never had windows, heat, air conditioning, plumbing, electricity even. It's perfect electricity.
Yeah.
So let's carry on then. Now we want to go into Massachusetts, and we want to punch in the EIN 31-158-0204.
EINs are tough to remember.
And then we hit the blue link, please. And now let's go to the report all the way down to 2001. It's the first entry. They actually were operating in Massachusetts in 2000, but they didn't bother to report.
Annual report?
Well, let's start with the 990. Let's hit view 759.6, yeah. And you got to hit the thing on the left, and maybe you're going to download it or something.
Yeah, it shows up over here.
Okay. All right, so this one, there is a version of this in ProPublica that shows when it was received. They on purpose, I think, sent it to Massachusetts without...
Why is this circled? Because it's late?
That's probably, it may have come in late. I don't know, it says it came in something in 2002. But if we go to the second page, the expense...
AG, it looks like...
It's probably a stamp.
09, so it's coming...
September
2002.
September 21, 2002.
Isn't that late?
For 2001, no.
Okay.
It's not late. Let's look at the second page. Okay, and we look at the professional fundraising fees. Do we see a number? Line 30?
No, nothing.
All right, how about postage and shipping, 35? Now we see they spent $4,000 on postage and shipping.
Seems low compared to 500,000.
What's other?
1.8 million almost.
Right, now do we see are there any similar kind of numbers that jump out here where they're taking, say, I don't see...
4,086 jumps at me because it reminds me of 4,096, which is a binary number, and they just subtracted 100. Here's 4,826.
So I think if we take 18,915 and divide that into 42,038, is that 45%?
18,915
into 42,038?
divided by 42,038.449.
45%. If we take 242,954 and divide it into 539,961, is that 45%?
242,944.
954 into 539.
Sorry, 242,954 divided by 9.
Divided by 539.
Yikes. Where are we looking here?
539,961.
I gotta start with the first one again.
242. 954.
954.
Divided by 539,961.
I screwed some up with the calculator.
This here.
I got it there. Okay, 242,954 divided by, people at home have already got this, divided by 539,961. 44.99%.
Yeah. Do we see a pattern here, Jason?
Yes.
Okay. So now
I don't, but you obviously do.
All right, so let's look at statement 2, which is going to be like, I'll get to you. It'll be a table, a typed table. Slowly, I think it's there. There. Yeah. Okay. Here we have direct mail, 1,000,000 buckaroonies.
Ooh, it's a lot more than 4,086.
Yeah. Now, I can look and see without a calculator that production expense, program services 7625 is 10% of 76248. And event expense of 6962 in program services is 10% of 69623. So you have an idiot.
Trying to lie.
It's like, just, there's so many, if you wanted to do this and or wanted to do it in a way, and I'm not suggesting people do this.
That would be hard to figure out.
It'd be hard to figure out.
This isn't it.
This isn't it. The way that's hard to figure out is there used to be a random number generator that was, I think, produced at the University College Dublin or University of Dublin that used cosmic wave radiation emissions to generate random numbers. So you would use that thing, and you would say, you could define a range, and you say, just, within this range, we're going to use this thing. You define the range randomly, and you define, and generate these random numbers. Don't have it be 45% and 10% and 25%. And while you're at it, say, I'm so confident in my work, though I'm required to have an audit, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have the dumbest auditing firm in the world that's not even registered in Arkansas to do this work, sign up a bunch of idiots to put their name and signature against these numbers, which are transparently false. No serious accounting firm that cared about its reputation would say it's okay to bury the fact that you're using, that the entity was disciplined in Mississippi and paid fines for not registering to solicit in Mississippi, probably did the same thing in other states, and file this form, which is filed in 2002, right, that's transparently false again, that doesn't disclose this information, and doesn't disclose that the fundraising agent that the Clinton Foundation employed was disciplined as well in Pennsylvania for similar activities, and we're going to get to that. So they're obviously trying to hide who's actually running this Clinton Foundation. Bill claims in his book, My Lies, that he started the Clinton Foundation in New York in 2001, shortly after leaving the White House. That's a direct quote, almost, from his book.
So, and also Epstein.
And Epstein claims he founded the Clinton Global Initiative. But the point being, you have here this first line, you're paying registration fees. These aren't to show up at strip clubs. These are to register in a whole bunch of states. But in the body of the 990, there's a question, or were you required to submit the 990 in any other states? And they say, no, not us.
So what's that registration fee money going to?
Of course, the no was wrong, right? Or maybe truthful. Maybe they didn't file a 990 in a bunch of states, but they were required in any state where you register an entity this big, you would have to put in the 990. So let's go back into the Massachusetts thing for a sec. And let's look at that PC, that line 65. Okay. Now, all right, this is the form they filed. And again, why I don't understand how this could be this badly fucked up is, we're not talking here about Charles Ortel making a 3D movie. We're talking about the former president of the United States.
Filing legal documents.
Yale Law School, Rhodes Scholar.
Should know how to do it.
Smartest woman in the world.
Or know how to hire somebody who knows how to do it.
Right, and so you look at this document. Organization data, got the name wrong, got the registered address wrong, got the EIN right. Look at this, date of organization, 10/23/97, date of incorporation, 10/23/97. There's a reason in Massachusetts why they ask both questions. Because as you know, you are not organized until you adopt bylaws.
Just because you're incorporated.
If you have incorporators, law firms file something, but the initial directors or trustees are not seated and don't sign the amended and restated articles of incorporation, you don't have an organization. Here they're lying to Massachusetts. These purpose codes, we've been through them before, have nothing to do with fighting AIDS and climate change and other stuff. We go to, I think, the next page. It says here they paid O'Brien, McConnell, they don't say the whole name. How did they pay $816,000? That was that the number that we had in the $1 million? I think was the number.
Yeah.
And let's see, keep going down here. We'll see the actual report. Just keep scrolling down. We'll get on this side if you can. Right. During the year, has your organization sold or transferred assets, allowed a related party to be indebted, made or held an investment in a related party, furnished goods, services, or facilities to a related party? In 2001, they opened up an office in New York, right, in Harlem. That's a related party. How did Bill Clinton's office expenses in Harlem get funded? How did his travel expenses get? They lie like hell to Massachusetts. Of course, we didn't do any of that. We don't even have an organization in New York. They would try to argue. which doesn't help you much in New York, where they should have reported. And then down the page, I don't know, on the left-hand side, you're going to get to the agreement. Here, okay, so you hit that page.
That's it?
Fundraising consultant information, and this is the final page?
Yeah.
Okay, so they try to be cheeky and say, we have it, but
It's not here.
It'd be really bad if you saw it. It'd be really bad. So we go back into the index, and we look at other. Okay, so other is fundraising consultant information. Is a direct marketing services agreement with O'Brien, McConnell, and Pearson. And that is signed at the very, I think if you, here, no, that's Peter, further up, there's two agreements. Yeah, this one. The first one is signed on December 28th, 2001. And it's signed by Skip Rutherford, and it's signed by Stephanie Street, who is a very low-ranking person.
It's funny, that's the name of a street in Las Vegas, Stephanie Street.
Really? And so there's one agreement with this firm, which I think also is involved, definitely was involved. It has a new name now. People have split up and stuff, but it was definitely a firm in the day, O'Brien, McConnell, and Pearson, that was heavily involved fundraising for progressive and Democrat causes, and possibly for the various Clinton presidential campaigns. So when you have, the way I split, when you think about splitting, if you have one contractor helping the Clinton Foundation and also Hillary's campaign, if you're going to use Ernie Skirmy's method of just saying, just put 10% over there, 25% over there, that's not the right way to do it. You should have actual books and records of account and the competence to be able to say, if Jason Goodman's working on both projects, he has to fill out daily timesheets contemporaneously, can't wait till a month later, so that we know that on the day he claimed that day that he is spending 6 hours on one thing and 4 hours on another thing, whatever the math is.
Bill it out to whoever.
And keep track of it, and that's the way you do it. So very clearly, O'Brien, McConnell, and Pearson was one of the most important vendors to the Clinton Foundation, engaged in direct mail for an entity. They're not smart enough to figure out the actual name of the entity. It's not William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. It's the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. And in terms of the minutiae, or as Fabien would say, the minutiaes of, and I can't speak French, so I'm just sort of gently teasing him a little bit. The way this typically works is a 501c3 170b1a6 public charity that's engaged in narrow activities, not fighting HIV/AIDS internationally, not running a global grifter forum in New York, but is engaged narrowly in certain activities, is eligible, unlike not all 501c3s are eligible for this, but this specific type could be eligible to get highly discounted, steeply discounted postage, right? And so typically what happens in these agreements that I've seen is that the firm, O'Brien, would say, listen, you handle the mailing. We're not getting involved, going to the post office and saying this is a mailing of 6 million pieces that deserves discounted postage, because if we lie to the post office,
that's federal. That's
serious fucking trouble, because people may not understand this, but the post office, the postal police were created way before the FBI. This is because the FBI came in 1900 something. Postal police was in the 18 something. And it's a very serious crime, actually enforced.
I hope that's true. I spoke with the postal police, and they said I need a judgment on something before they'll do anything.
Right. So that's generally why established firms that understand these rules say, you, the charity, we're not going to go into your books and records and check to make sure that you're validly organized and operated, because you're the Clintons, and we know you're not. And if we don't check, we can always say we relied on the fact that you lied to us under oath, and you know how to do that, so we're stupid and we wanted to get paid, and you told us we'd be protected. So the Clinton Foundation, therefore, and this guy Rutherford, who, I used to think he was just a doofus, but this guy seems to be somebody. He's now in his 70s, I believe, spent his whole life in politics. He loves the Clintons. He was the second dean of the Clinton School of Public Service, how fitting, probably made some money off that, maybe got a pension, certainly has a high profile in Little Rock and maybe even nationally, how you could sign this agreement and then knowing, that you also just signed a consent agreement with Mississippi and that you lied on multiple other state filings, how you could do this and think that it would make sense for you to put your name in to be the first dean of the Clinton School of Public Service is just beyond me. It really is.
Well, this is exactly what the public service is, according to the Clintons.
Well, but that's just reprehensible. And
So is he still that?
I think he's just stepped down.
But to exit in 2021, it says.
Yeah, so he's out. It's 2022. He looks a bit like Tony Blinken.
Maybe he's a clone.
So if we go then to that thing in Pennsylvania, if you're going to choose a crooked fund, if you got a crooked foundation,
Pennsylvania?
Where is it?
What thing in Pennsylvania?
The first thing that you did together. When I got here, the first piece that you put up.
I thought it was.
No. No.
I don't know.
The agreement, the 10-page agreement that you download, you send it to me.
Oh, yeah. This.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're a crooked charity, what you want to do is you want to find a crooked fundraising operation that's prepared to break the laws in multiple states, including in this case Pennsylvania.
Anybody crooked want to be only working with crooked people, or you have the danger that an honest person will turn you in.
So these guys were working in Pennsylvania in February and in March and in early 2000. We don't know from this document how much of this work was for the Clinton Foundation. But my suspicion is, again, if I were a senior person who in the FBI, a real FBI, one of the first things I would have done, and this is one of the things, this is my training in investment banking at the very beginning, is before you waste a lot of time and energy on a project, you establish that the client exists. I mean, it's a useful thing to know that it's not a fictitious.
But is it really something that needs to be? I mean, is it ever even in question?
Many, many times. I can't tell you the number of people who have tried to bullshit their way.
With a fake company.
Fake idea. If I got this contract, I got this gold project in Sierra Leone, I got this, I got that. The person has never left Manhattan. People, I mean, it's just
a lot of fake things.
There are a lot of fraudsters.
Sue companies that don't even own the thing they're suing over.
Right, exactly. And they have all sorts of problems. So anyway, this is in 2002. It recites the long history, and I suppose John Durham and his people could look at this and should look at this. So you had the foundation itself disciplined, you have the fundraiser disciplined, you have an auditor that's not registered at this time inside Arkansas issuing fake audits and issuing fucked up 990s that are so wrong. And this is in the earliest days of the Clinton Foundation. I mean, when he was president, you understand that maybe he gets away as president doing what he wants to do because he's president, especially after he's not convicted in the impeachment trial. He's like home free. He does what he wants. But George Bush is the president at this point. And there is a large FBI investigation. This is something that we hadn't put up before, but I wonder if on Google you can put up FBI Vault, William J. Clinton Foundation.
We've looked at that before, haven't we?
Right, I know, but sometimes the new viewers haven't seen. Yeah, so this is a three-part thing. I think, which is the one that's long? Can you tell? It says the bulk of these records, so some come from other files, but I think the second part is 500 pages. Is that?
It's a large file.
Yeah. Does it say?
It's several hundred pages.
I think it's 512 pages or something. It's quite a few pages. But
it's a binary number as well.
I think it's 416, page 416 or thereabouts. I may have this wrong. 416, you passed it. Let's see if that, yeah. keep going to the next page, maybe. It's a redacted. Well, anyway, they describe in this portion of the many pages of documents that the FBI would have had access to by 2016 when they opened an investigation, and Durham's people should have access to now. They say in this file that the investigation that was entered into the Clinton Foundation was exhaustive or extensive and involved.
Exhausting.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff deleted and missing in the 3 parts that are on their vault file. I've got to believe, and one thing that's quite interesting and ties back to Biden, they talk in these various memos, they talk about how, look at this, this document is sensitive in nature and is not to be viewed by anyone other than for whom it is intended.
Oh.
Right? And they talk throughout these various parts, there's mention of, well, this document, let's not put it into the system.
The, what's that thing called? Sentinel, right?
Yeah, let's not put it into the system. And again, if you have a system, it should be a system. You shouldn't have the ability to say,
not put things in it.
The stuff that could look bad,
yeah.
we'll put
Don't
it over
put
here.
that in there.
Put that in the bleach bit system.
Yeah.
We never saw that, So the point here is that the FBI should have wound the Clinton Foundation up in 2001. It should have been an exercise of maybe 3 weeks, 5 weeks, right? And I
pay them by the hour, Charles.
Yeah. But on the Biden-related topic is that in the Schweitzer book, they talk about how Schweitzer has obtained, through his researchers or whatever, has obtained communications that suggest clearly that Hunter, while Joe was vice president, was paying for Joe to have private phone lines that were not in his name that he could use to make calls as president. And they were having off-the-books meetings that were not recorded in the White House of client friends of Hunter going in to, hey, can I meet Barack Obama? Can I go here? Can I go there? And it's not recorded going. All that shit needs to change. I mean, we either should just give up on the whole presidential library stuff and say, look, Mystery Science Theater.
Give up on having a president if this is what they're going to do.
Just say, it's Mystery Science Theater when it comes to records. We don't keep records. They could be damaging. We just don't do that. You're going to have to guess what happened, Or we should have a system where if you want to meet with people who are in a position to have major influence over American foreign policy, over business, the matters of economics, you're going to have to meet only, in places where we can make sure that you're vetted. In other words, you're going to have to go through a security process so we make sure you're not bringing in cyanide or anthrax crack pipes or hookers or whatever. And there's got to be a record.
Detection machine.
There's got to be a record.
Beep. Oh, step over here, ma'am.
That's right.
We need to check you.
We did some
more
testing
carefully.
Here, real tests. Anyway, there need to be real records here, and the fact that the vice president. Well, you think about it, and we wonder, why has Trump been persecuted? The reason I think in part Trump has been persecuted is I'm not saying he did the same sort of shit, although there are books written about how the Trump family profited off his White House, and maybe some did, and if they did, that's wrong.
Probably they did.
But the point here is that it's not simply, Bill and Hillary and Chelsea scurrying around, grifting like hell with Dennis Chang at the Clinton Foundation. You got the Biden Institute going, we got already the Obama Foundation, we've got the Bush Foundations moving along here, we've got the McCain Institute, we've got all these grifters in Washington, D.C. saying, look, this is how we roll. And as far as insider trading is concerned, you are only going to punish the people who don't give us political donations, who are not in politics for insider trading. Of course, how do you expect me to pay for these mansions? These private, of course I get to trade on inside information.
Well, they have some kind of bill coming now to stop that. Good news, Charles. They do have a handy hooker tester.
I don't think you'd want to be spending time with a hooker that survived that kind of a test.
This is the test. I don't know exactly how you utilize this.
Captain Hooker tester.
Test the hooker, but it doesn't look good.
I think it's probably the parlance has something to do with something else. So I want to spend,
Maybe.
I know we're close to time here. If we look at the Amazon thing.
Oh, yeah.
I just purchased this
Perfect
book.
segue.
Yeah, well, Yeah, even I suppose I'm a schoolboy. But anyway, this is actually quite a well-written book so far, and it goes into the history of accounting. And I didn't know that in Roman times, people were required to keep books of account. If you're a merchant, if you're a wealthy person, you had to keep annual books of account. And the genius of this system, and why I can instantly go and say, and people we work with can look at the Clinton Foundation financial accounts and say they're garbage, dates to this system, which some argue, it's not footnoted, some argue that the Hindu merchants and the Phoenicians did this 5,000 years ago. But,
double entry accounting?
well, what that means is that there are two ways of measuring, two ways that must balance, two different ways of measuring your profit during a year, basically. And so one way is to go on December 31st at the end of a year and say, all right, Jason, tell me, I'm your accountant, tell me all of your assets and all of your liabilities on this day. And what that means is, all your bank accounts, any securities accounts, any real estate, any other thing that might be an asset that should go on the books we need to know about, any bills that are owed on December 31st, 2022, but haven't been paid, we need to know about those. And you get all that work done properly. And all of these items there's support for all these items. It's not like, 25% or 45% or 10. There's actual.
Very even.
Yeah, exactly.
It's curious.
Why do we say 25%?
Seems odd.
So just a brief segue. I remember I was working with this. I have a friend, and I helped him with a fund, and he was very successful then, and later even more successful. And he was telling me about how looking to buy this rental car company. I'm not gonna say which one. And he in a leveraged buyout, and he worked with a supposed expert. Really knew the industry well.
Uh-oh.
And he'd get to the how much do you think we're going to grow revenues this year per car? Why don't we put in 10%? 10% sounds good. Well, how many cars, new cars, versus another 10%? How much are we going to cut expenses? Why don't we use 10%?
What the hell?
And my friend just said, listen, Mr. 10%, you can forget about it. We're not doing this.
Wow.
That's not what, even back in Roman times, in ancient times, that's not the way it would work. If you say you have, a country house that has 165 acres and a pool and tennis courts and 14,000 square feet of buildings and roads and this and that, you got to prove that you have that to your accounting. Or the other thing, so you start and you measure your net worth at the end of the year, and you measure your net worth at the beginning of the year, and the difference has got to be explained typically by a mixture of, in the simplistic days, it was just revenues versus expenses. So your net worth, meaning you either positive net worth or you negative net worth, but let's assume it's a positive net worth. Let's use $100,000.
10%.
And 10% of that, no. Let's say it went from 100,000 to 152,000, right? So then when you check the difference between your revenues in 2022 and your expenses in 2022, it better be $52,000, because
Or something's wrong.
or there's an explanation that maybe you raised money or you did whatever, but you would hope it would be pretty close to 52,000. And then the slight advancement that I think is actually quite good is that there's another statement, which is the cash flow statement. Sometimes you can have a difference between, often you have a difference between your net profit in a year and the movement in cash. And that can be explained by lots of different things. And so you need a statement to reconcile it. These statements all must balance. And it's not like, when they don't balance, that's by a dollar, actually. If they don't balance by a dollar, there's a problem. If they don't balance by, say, 70 million on a net profit of 75 million,
It's a big problem.
it's a massive problem, which is the case of the Clinton Foundation. So by 2004, they were so far off the books. So anyway, this book, going back to it for a second, is a very, for people who don't, that's a good book too, but
This one.
yeah, I've only gotten, say, 40 pages into it, and it's just, it provides a lot of interesting context as to why accounting is important and how significant it was. But where I'm going to blow your mind in closing this is the book starts with a reference to a speech given by Robert, what was his middle initial?
F. Kennedy?
Robert F. Kennedy, about GDP right before he was assassinated.
Really?
Where he talked about, it opens with this vignette about where he gives this impassioned speech criticizing the use of GDP as being an inexact way.
But I thought you don't like Democrat
Well,
fiscal
so
policy.
here we go. On 18 March 68, 3 months before he was killed, he spoke about the dangers of using GNP then, which is the predecessor to GDP. And what he was, look here, the GNP back in 68 was only 800 billion. You know, now
What is it now?
It's 20 trillion.
Holy crap.
Yeah. But the point is, $1 in 1968
With a lot more.
would get you a lot more than $1 in 2022. But he's right, actually. This for different
Too
reasons.
much and for too long.
Right.
We seem to have surrendered personal excellence and community values.
That I miss Maryland. Anyway, but he's right here, and the author gets in. This is something I know a lot about. Actually, I've been thinking about this for 40 years, off and on. That if you say you allow your politicians and the Federal Reserve to say an increase in GNP or GDP means we're doing a good job, then you are creating an ability to completely game the system. Because if GNP or GDP, see, I've talked to him about this, before. Simon Kuznets,
Who?
you see here, it's right here.
Well, who is he, though?
He's the person who was asked by Franklin D. Roosevelt to invent a system to track the economy. And he's the one who basically modified and came up with this GNP construct, writing a memo to the Senate Finance Committee in 1933 that's incredibly instructive because, 33, yeah.
Well, no, but that's when they made the Federal Reserve, isn't it?
No, 1913.
1913. Something happened in 1933.
Roosevelt was sworn in on March 4th, 1933. They used to swear him in later, and then they switched it to January 20th. Anyway, for his first term. So I found it interesting that this book would start by, I haven't read the whole book yet, so I don't know if they come to the same conclusions that I do, that GNP and GDP are horrific measures of, just like, you know, if you just look at a change in the balance sheet, but ignore what happened in your difference between your revenues and expenses and your cash, you can think you puffed up your GDP by a big number, but if you do that by borrowing a shitload of money that you can't pay back, you're committing a leveraged decapitalization. I mean, you're killing yourself, which is what the Chinese have been doing.
Leverage decapitalization, of course, I saw that as well. But it's interesting, Charles, there is a fiscal point where you agree with a Democrat of yore.
No, I would say that I'm not like a crazy environmentalist, but I think that.
But Kennedys in general.
I don't like the Kennedys.
Right. I do think the world would have been better if they had not been assassinated and allowed to become president, or, well, finish the term and then Bobby become president. It's pretty bad. And I do think that a lot of the people that we talk about are part of the crew that knows what happened there.
Could be.
And it's also interesting how that book says, well, an assassin's bullet. Actually, no, it was the security guard standing behind him, according to the guy who did the autopsy and the forensic scientific evidence. The thing that really upsets me about these people who insist that we trust the science is that when you actually do that, they say, shut up, you're a conspiracy theorist.
Which is what Fauci did last Fauci and Collins. And
said what?
Basically, there's excellent reporting by Brett Baer, on the 6 o'clock hour, where he did like 2 or 3 segments going back over the ground of the earliest days of COVID and what did people know and what was Fauci thinking. And he uncovered email. He did, through, Freedom of Information Act requests, he gets stuff back where Fauci is saying to Collins or vice versa, well, we better not, emphasize or state the possibility of it's man-made because that will encourage the conspiracy theorists.
Right.
And again, you should, ever since Hillary Clinton did that, back in 1993, my husband and I have long been a victim of a vast right-wing. It should be like a screeching, sound that you get in those comedies in a
the
crash.
record skips off the.
Yeah, it's like no, you can't do that, Hillary. I mean, it's like the criminal. The guy who he threw somebody on the guy who threw somebody on the subway tracks a couple weeks ago. and stuck his tongue out on TV.
Yeah.
That guy.
Did they let him out yet? He thinks he's Jesus, I think.
They'll probably clean them all up, and he'll say, now, I'm representing myself, and you're going to hear a lot. The people who are making these accusations are wild conspiracy theorists, left-leaning and right-leaning.
I don't think we're going to hear that from that guy. He's just going to like drool on the desk.
I think he's probably better at defending himself than this guy.
Well, Joe Old, Neil Young, I don't know, did Spotify decide if they want Joe Rogan or Neil Young?
It's not going to be close.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, Neil, about that. But
I don't really have any issue with Neil Young.
I think, look, artists should stick to arting,
Yeah. Did you know he's married to Daryl Hannah, and she announced in 2021 that she's pregnant? She's 61. Doesn't that make her like one of the oldest women to ever become pregnant?
I find that unlikely,
But that's what she said. Are you being a conspiracy theorist, Charles?
No.
Daryl Hannah lying?
Let's see. What major roles has she played?
Splash.
Splash. She played a mermaid. Okay, she's obviously good at swimming.
She was Pris in Blade Runner. That was amazing. And also,
I have friends who know her who say that she's a bit out there. But I saw her walking down Park Avenue, and she looked.
She looks like she's had a lot of plastic surgery to me.
She looks like she's not getting good advice on her clothes budget.
Well, the oldest mother to ever give birth, I don't know if that's different than somebody else who would give birth, but Maria del Carmen Busada de Lara is the oldest verified mother. She was 66 and 358 days when she gave birth to twins. That's unbelievable.
That's surprising. Yeah.
That is a powerful vagina, Charles.
Uterus, right?
Both, the whole thing. I don't know how you could tolerate that. I feel like I'm too old to get involved in having kids, and she's 61. And Neil Young looks like he's
100. Well, maybe
Yeah.
that's why he wants to be on. Maybe that's why he said, pick Joe Rogan or me, because I need the money.
He's like, hey, I'm ready to croak anyway.
But the art department, once again, has outdone itself.
Oh, thank you. There's one other thing I wanted to bring to your attention, Charles, because, there's been a lot going on with the Duke of Earl or whatever he is. The Duke of Dopes. Yeah, so Netflix and Spotify again are doing something. Their podcast has been universally panned, and so they're recruiting help for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's shows. I heard that they were basically taking ownership of this thing back. Wow, they signed deals reportedly worth in excess of $120 million. And so far they've produced one podcast that everybody says is terrible. They also seem to have all the stuff. Yeah. They also seem to have all the stuff for their charity and their podcast on this same archwell.com website, which it sort of feels like a no-no.
Isn't David Furnish Elton John's? David Furnish?
I don't know who that is.
I'll just say Google.
One time when we were 18, a friend of mine got stopped with a case of beer in the trunk of his car. And the cop said, "Young man, who furnished you these beers?" And he said, "We haven't furnished them yet, sir." And he let him go.
Really?
Yeah, is that funny? David Furnish is a Canadian filmmaker.
Oh, maybe I have it wrong. Yeah, there he is with Elton John.
But what is...
He is married
and with
to
the
Elton
kids. Right. Nice tuxedos. Kids in tuxedos. It's always funny.
That is cute, actually.
Yeah.
Keep him away. Yeah. So here's Elton John's husband, or whatever you call partner.
Elton John's husband, David Furnish, and it's an incredible love story.
Well, that's fine, but I mean, but my point is, what's Furnish?
This is cool. He's the Rocket Man.
Yeah, I mean, in his prime,
He's a fantastic... I like Elton John a lot better than Neil Young. People might hate me for that, but...
Elton John got dragged into this whole Clinton Foundation mess.
Yeah, I mean, setting him aside as a person and his transactions or whatever, Benny and the Jets and things like that, I like.
Yeah. Back in the day, I mean, when he was in his prime, he was amazing.
But he is giving his jet, I don't know about Benny, but he's giving the jet to Meghan and Harry, and there's this whole big thing where he wants Prince Charles to pay for the security. And then you told me now that there's some scandal. Where did we see that? That Charles and Camilla have a secret son?
May have had a son. I mean, again,
Is that the hidden king of England they've been talking about? What happens if that's the case?
I don't know.
How did they figure out who... The Queen's like, forget it, I'm living forever, all of you...
Well, this is an old problem. If you punch into Google Perkin Welbeck, Perkin, Welbeck, there's no truth to the rumor that he's John Hope Bryan's ancestor, but
Who is he?
you'll see.
Wait, is this the right guy?
Yep, Warbeck, yeah.
Okay.
He pretended to be the rightful heir to the throne of
Oh,
England.
this is a common scheme. There was some guy on YouTube who, that idiot Charlie Ward was trying to get me to have on the show. He's like, this is the real king of England.
Oh, I know.
was like, oh, I'm sure.
Right, yeah.
By the way, your lease payment on the bridge in Brooklyn is due, Charlie. Where is that? Oh, that's his driver's license.
Yeah, he's on the board of the Clinton
Daddy
Foundation.
Warbecks.
Yeah.
Well, Charles, it's always a good laugh when we consider the horrendous crimes of these various international grifters. So amazing. I hope something will be done.
I think the progress with Durham is encouraging. I think that there is a tax case in the U.S. tax court.
Right.
It is sealed, but it used to have an index. I think that is now sealed.
Why is the index sealed?
Because it's
There's a lot of stuff coming out.
yeah. So I think what I noticed. I said this to you when I noticed that Elias left with his team a number of months back. I mean, if you've got as your clients the Clintons, you're close to the Obamas, they're in Washington D.C. Perkins Coie is was a very powerful big firm. You don't turf out of there. I mean,
So we kicked him out.
right.
Or they said,
This whole being
you got to leave.
Yeah, exactly. So when I saw that, and I see Durham being quiet, what they're suggesting now is going to happen is that there'll be negative chatter, that there'll be, like as there was a number of weeks or months ago, where they tried to accuse Durham of making a mistake in the Sussman thing, and the people like Ben
Yeah,
Williams.
they said there's some scurrilous accusations coming.
Forthcoming again on Durham. And I will, from what I've seen so far, I mean, I would bet on Durham and bet on the tax court and bet on also the fact that in the Democratic Party, we don't need no stinking Clinton Foundation. We don't need the Clintons coming back to life like a horror movie. We just don't need that.
It seems like they started that and then there's been nothing. Like Hillary had her wonderful shot on Alexa, whatever that.
And the polls came back. It's like, so how'd I do?
The master class was not.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, by the way, nobody watched that.
No, it's like it sucked. It's yeah, not good.
Well, let's just do one more little segment here. This could be almost even a weekly segment. We should check the White House YouTube channel for the number of thumbs
let's do it.
down.
Down in the dumps with
Down
Joe
in the
Biden.
dumps. Thumbs down for
Look,
Joe Biden.
I have a lot of time for people who are deaf, but why?
Of all the ailments, this is what we choose to. Well, that's like, Disney is making a new Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and they decided Snow White needs to be
black.
Latinx.
Well,
But they kept the dwarfs, so Peter Dinklage is pissed. 3.3 thumbs down, 3K.
33.
Yeah, I know. And only 408 people liked it. Do they have
23,000 views.
That's not a lot for the guy who's the president of the United States on a channel with 2 million subscribers. I mean, I think even the 8,000 strong.
Well, use the math. It's just like his campaign appearances at the Jeep dealerships. He's closing moments of the campaign. Let's go to that Jeep dealership near my house in Delaware.
He's such a dope. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Scranton Joe.
There's actually something, Charles, going on with the Jason Goodman YouTube channel that I could reveal right now. But I think I might want a sweaty, disgusting guy in an RV to think about it harder and write more pleadings about it before I reveal what has actually happened.
Uh-huh.
But there's been a change today with Google that hopefully might allow me to bring the Jason Goodman channel back.
Oh, great.
No guarantees, but something happened today.
Good.
And I'm working on it.
Sounds good. That's a good tease.
Yeah, and start typing away. Anyway, for people who aren't sitting in an RV smelling their own stinky feet and probably need to trim their toenails, you can become sponsors on Crowdsource the Truth and help me with the counter lawfare effort. It's ramping up right now, and also your sponsorship helps keep the show going. So please join me on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I'm also engaged in talks with a new developer. I didn't talk about this too much, but the effort to create the Crowdsource the Truth video server, as you know, Charles, failed spectacularly, and it's been taken sort of offline. It's been deactivated. But I have a new developer engaged, and we were about to begin phase 2 of trying to make the thing work. It is not easy, I can tell you that.
Yeah, it's a big panoply of
and particularly when you have people pushing against you in the other direction. But thanks to all the viewer sponsors who make these efforts possible, keep the show going. Thanks to Neil Young for his stupid tweets. I hope he gets kicked off of Spotify, because that would be hilarious. That's like when the high school girlfriend says, "If you don't write back to me, I'm never talking to you again."
So you didn't write back to me?
I'm serious. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't miss High Dive with Lee Stranahan. We're going to be talking about Ukraine, and Lee has got a lot of insight over there. He's interviewed Andre, what was the guy's name? Lee will tell us his name, but he was working in the Ukrainian embassy. He had documents. Poroshenko, I think. He's been kicked out of the United States. He's under sanctions.
Well, I love just the Ukraine government officials' response to Biden ramping up and the big, we're going to have the largest.
Since World War II, the invasion, if Russia goes in.
And the reaction of I don't know if it was a prime minister or whoever it was, but a senior guy was, people need to calm down. You're safer in Kyiv than you are in Los Angeles.
It's true.
And it might be the leader of the country, because I think he was a comedian, right?
That's true.
Yeah, so
Zelensky.
It's also true.
Yeah.
I mean, what he said is true. Not a joke, sadly.
Exactly. So tune in for that tonight. We'll be talking to Lee. Thank you, Charles, for amazing display of mathematical. It's like The Beautiful Mind, when you just like 25%. Drop some toothpicks.